keep in mind when you're doing this job after you're done, you're going to want to go to a local garage and have the vehicle aligned so you don't have premature tire wear. I'm going to take the wheel off, use a 17mm socket, take these lug studs off, go to take the last one off. Because they're lug studs, the wheel's just going to fall. So I'm going to hold the wheel on, take that stud off, and then grab the wheel, take it off. Loosen up this jam nut. I'm going to use a 15/16 wrench. You could also use a 24mm wrench. There's a little collar right here. Just take a pry bar or a screwdriver, just tap it so it's loose. Now I'll take the tie rod nut off. I'm going to use a 22mm socket. Take that off. And this just happens to be loose enough that I could just pull it off. You may need a pickle fork or just hit the end with a hammer to break that free. I'm just going to use a little rust penetrant just to loosen up the outer tie rod from the inner. I'm going to hold the inner tie rod with some locking pliers and then use a 7/8 wrench and just loosen up the outer tie rod end. As I loosen it, I want to count how many times I turn it. So that'd be one turn. The reason why you count the turns is when you go to put this back together, you want it as close as possible. You're still gonna have to go to a shop and have the vehicle aligned after, but this will get it so it may not burn the tires off your vehicle as quickly. Getting to the shop. 24, 25. So that was 25, so I'm gonna write that number down. Now I wanna take that jam nut off. Take a 24mm socket, take it right off. Now take those locking pliers off. And I'm just going to use some hose clamp pliers. There's a hose clamp right here that holds the boot on. Just take that off, set it aside. Now I want to take the clamp off the inside of the boot. I'm going to use a long straight pick. Just right in that location right there. And sometimes just take a hammer and just tap it a little bit and just try to pry this out a little. Sometimes you can reuse these clips or clamps. Sometimes you have to throw them out. Yeah, there we go. Got it off. And I didn't break it, so I can actually reuse this. You're supposed to replace them, but you can still reuse them. I'm going to use a long hook and just get underneath the boot. Just try to pull it forward, try not to stab the boot. And you can grab the boot. And you should be able to just grab it and slide it right off. All right, so when I go to take the inner tie rod end off, I want to make sure I hold this shaft from spinning. We don't want to break the internals of the actual steering shaft. So I'm going to use a pipe wrench or something similar to a pipe wrench, and then a large adjustable. Sure this fits right. That on there, just loosen it up. There we go. Once you get it to break free, it should be a little bit easier to get this off. You can do it by hand, and you don't have to count these threads. And take it off, and take the inner tie rod end and get it started. Now I'm going to take a special inner tie rod tool, get the right adapter to fit. Take the pipe wrench reset, and a torque wrench. Take the torque wrench. Oops, this is in my way. Yep. And I'm going to torque this to 81 foot-pounds. There we go. And if you don't have that tool and a torque wrench, just do the best you can. So I'm going to reuse this clamp, just put it on the boot. If you can't reuse the clamp, you can always use a wire tie. Just find one that's big enough and just tighten it as tight as you can. Or if you get a new one of these clamps, that works too. All right, and just slide this over. Might have to twist it a little bit. To tighten that clamp, I'm going to use these special pliers. It's going to be hard to get in there. Try to get behind the power steering lines. Right there. And just squeeze the pliers. And just make sure that clamp is tight, and it's good. Now I'm going to take this clamp, use the hose clamp pliers, and put this on the end of the boot. Oops. There you go. And put the jam nut on. And take this little spacer thing. This is actually what crushes the outer tie rod end that crushes this. So the tapered end, that's going to go towards the tie rod end, and the flat end's going to go towards the jam nut. Slide that on there. Slide the tie rod end in, and just count how many times you turned it. 25. So that was 25 turns. And I'm just going to take this cover off. That's just for shipping. And just twist the knuckle in position. Get the stud to go through the knuckle. There we go. And take the nut, put the nut on. I want to tighten up this outer tie rod nut, but to prevent the stud from spinning, I can actually use a hex bit, a 7mm hex bit. So I'll use a 7/8 wrench to tighten the nut, or a 22, and a 7mm hex bit. It's a little bit tedious, but you could also use a ratchet wrench. It's snugged up. Now I'm going to torque this nut to 48 foot-pounds. To be able to get the right angle on there, you may have to turn the wheel to move the knuckle so you can access that. And now tighten up this jam nut. Now, if you can get a torque wrench on here, if you have a crow's foot, you're going to want to torque that to 38 foot-pounds. Take the wheel, put the wheel back on. Get the lug stud. Now I'm just going to torque these lug bolts to 110 foot-pounds. I'm going to do it in a star pattern so that it tightens the wheel down evenly. And just go around again, double check.